I'm Deepika Bhandari. Today I bring you another learning episode on behalf of the content writers Dr. G.S. Sodhi and myself on an important unit of paper Crime and Society titled as Hate Crime. In this episode, we will discuss what is meant by hate crime and its history. The episode will also deal with the psychological factors involved in hate crime, along with a mention of laws regarding hate crimes in India. This lecture will comprise of the following modules: Introduction, Historical background of hate crime, Laws against hate crimes in India, Psychological factors for hate crime, and finally the conclusion. Let us begin this module by discussing what is meant by hate crimes. Hate crimes are defined as crimes which have an added element of biasness to them. That is, they are traditional crimes such as murder, assault, rape, vandalism, etc., which are committed with a biased mind. In other words, these are bias-motivated crimes based on biasness of the perpetrator. Hate crime is a form of offence or infraction committed against a specific group of people. Hate crime is a form of prejudice that is focused at a group of people based on the people's race, age, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, religion, etc., or any other specific characteristic. When two groups of different beliefs and thinking comes in contact with each other, then there are chances of development of tension or conflict, which often results in violence. Whether the crime committed is in the form of a sexual assault, robbery, homicide, or verbal abuse, the intention behind these crimes are based on hatred for that particular group of people. Hate crimes are based on prejudice-inspired crime, which happens when a culprit targets the victim because of victim's association with a certain social group. All the non-criminal acts that are inspired by these social reasons are sometimes called as bias incidents. From a psychological point of view, prejudice means a type of negative thinking or attitude for individuals based on their groups with whom these individuals are related to. The criminals may act out of a stereotypical belief or emotions like fear, envy, or repulsion about the individuals who are different, as a group of people or individuals who are divided on the basis of age, culture, social class, and traditional background shares the same stereotyped picture of different groups. In severe cases, a hate monger can also join any structured group in order to dedicate his or her life in destroying individuals or group of individuals whom he or she considers as inferior. When it comes to cultural or religion-based prejudice, it becomes a largely shared and continuing element in the society. The spread of hate crimes is far-reaching across the globe. For example, in USA, hate crime frequents in the form of racism which is encountered by black people of any gender, age or social status. In Germany, same situation is experienced by the anti-Semitism and anti-Turkish people who had emigrated from other countries. For a criminal activity to be labelled as hate crime, it is crucial that the crime follows these two criteria. Firstly, the criminal act committed should come under the criminal code of jurisdiction, and secondly, the crime committed should have bias motivation. Here the term bias motivation means that the criminal selects or target an individual on the basis of protected characteristic. Further, the term protected characteristic means essential characteristic shared by group of individuals like age, gender, race, religion, etc. Let us now learn about the characteristics of hate crimes. Hatred is shown towards innocence, which is a sign of frustration of perpetrator. Hate crimes are passionate and impersonal, and lastly, they are based on power and prejudice. Classification of hate crimes. We will now have a look at the classification of hate crimes. Hate crimes are classified into the following types. First, racist hate crimes. Second, homophobic hate crime. Third, region hate crime. Fourth, sectarian hate crime. Fifth, transgender hate crime. And sixth, disability hate crime. Let us briefly discuss these one by one. Racist hate crimes. In racist hate crimes, the victims are selected on the basis of color of their skin, language, or from a particular country to which the victims belong. Homophobic hate crimes. In these type of hate crimes, the victims are selected on the basis of sexual orientation such as homosexuals, lesbians, gays and bisexuals. Religion hate crimes. In religion hate crimes, the hate mongers select the victim on the basis of their religion or lack of faith in their religion. Sectarian hate crimes. In sectarian hate crimes, victims are selected on the basis of community background, example, Catholic, Jewish, etc., or those who are having different political opinions, example, nationalist or loyalist. Transgender hate crimes. Here the victims are selected on basis of difference in their gender, identity after birth, sex, and lastly, disability hate crimes, where the victims are selected on the basis of mental or physical disability that the victims possess. In the next section, we shall discuss about the historical background of hate crimes. In the 1980s, the word hate crime was frequently used in the United States of America, but it had been also used in earlier when such events took place. Hate crimes are not new in this era. For example, the Romanians used hate crime for torturing Christians, and in Germany, the Nazis used hate crime for killing the Jewish people. Therefore, hate crimes were committed by government as well as individuals long before the term actually came into the picture. One of the most famous hate crime committed in the world was the Nazis' torture of the Jewish. Hitler called the persecution as the final solution. This Holocaust led to the mass murder of thousands of people in concentration camps. In Rwanda and Bosnia, genocide or an act to destroy entire cultural, religious and racial group occurred. In the 16th century, when Europeans started to colonize different parts of the world, the people living in the colonized areas became targets of hate crime or biasness based violence or act. Throughout the past 2 centuries in USA, hate crimes were committed in the name of lynching of the African Americans living there. The southern parts of Mexico witnessed cross burning of black people traveling from large white neighborhood. Assaults on homosexuals, transgender and bisexual people also came into picture. In the 18th century, the word lynch came into the use from the actions of Charles Lynch. Charles Lynch, along with military officers, surrounded the Tory supporters who were present at an informal court for a summary trial. These supporters got punishment which included seizure of property, whipping, forced pledges of allegiance and recruitment into the military. This act was associated with suppression of African Americans living in the South. Further, the police authority was not in existence. Till this date, similar hate crimes are happening on a smaller scale in these areas. Likewise, in the United States of America, hate crimes are majorly racially motivated. According to the reports of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, there was a total of 8% increase in the rate of hate crimes in the year of 2008. Let us now discuss about the different laws enacted against hate crimes in India. India is a diverse country having citizens of different religion, culture, social and economic status, etc. Hate crime is not new in the history of India. Majority of the hate crimes in India are based on caste and religion. The earliest form of hate crime in India was untouchability and discrimination between people on the basis of caste and social status. Violence on the lower caste takes the form of harassment, abuse and even forced eviction from the place of worship, and molestation or rape of the women of lower castes was prevalent. People from lower castes were not encouraged to study or work in big cities. The Indian Constitution abolished the practice of untouchability and supports absolute equality between its citizens. Further, the hate crimes based on castes are dealt under the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Act of 1989. Also, there are different sections present in the Indian Penal Code which prohibits hate speech. Let us learn about the sections that prohibits activities related to hate crimes. Section 95 of Crp C, that is Criminal Procedure Code. This section states that the Government of India has the power to declare some publications like newspapers or magazines articles forfeited if the document published contains matter which is punishable under the sections of Indian Penal Code 124A, 153A, 153B, 292, 293 and 295A. The government has the power to issue the warrant against the publisher. Section 153A of Indian Penal Code. According to this section, whoever promotes hatred, disharmony, ill will among people on the basis of religion, race, language, culture or caste using words, whether written or spoken or by gestures, will be punished with imprisonment up to 3 years with or without fine or both. Section 295A of Indian Penal Code. Here, whichever person spoke words or wrote them with having deliberate and hateful intentions of hurting or insulting the religious feelings of individual will be punished with imprisonment up to 3 years and fine. And lastly, the section 124A of Indian Penal Code. This section talks about sedition. Whoever person spoke words or write them to bring hatred or excite the disaffection will be punished with 1 year of imprisonment along with the fine. We will now discuss about the psychological factors of hate crime in our next section. Psychological factors for hate crime. Hate crime involves acts of violence and intimidation and thus is the mechanism of power and oppression intended to reiterate the precarious hierarchies that characterize a given social order. It attempts to simultaneously recreate the threatened, real or imagined, domination of the perpetrator's group and the appropriate subordinate identity of the victim's group. The psychological impact of hate crime on individuals. Hate crimes are underreported worldwide, providing limited information on the incidents. However, the existing data on hate crime relies on the cases which are reported to the police, thus depending not only on the willingness of victims to report, but also on their ability to provide sufficient evidence of the hate motive to police personnel. Igansky in 2008 points out that in only few hate crime incidents do offenders use force or physical violence. The majority of offences range from verbal abuse to harassment, to assaults and criminal damage, and many of these offences go unreported. In addition, the data collected over the last 2 decades reveals that hate crime represents a severe threat to the physical and psychological safety and well-being of its victims. In fact, what distinguishes hate crime from other types of crimes is that all hate crimes generally hurt more than general crimes. The notion that hate crimes inflict greater harms on their victims is therefore the fundamental dimension in its conceptualization. Several authors suggest that individual victims of hate crime may suffer more extreme mental health and well-being consequences from hate crime victimization as compared to other types of crime victimizations. As indicated by the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation, the common signs and symptoms of trauma reactions and excessive stress include physical, cognitive, emotional and behavioral factors. In order to assess psychological impact, these additional factors also need to be considered. The American Psychological Association recognizes that this kind of attack takes place on 2 levels. Not only is it an attack on one's physical self, but it is also an attack on one's very identity. Thus, the association highlights that psychological and emotional damage, intense feelings of fear, vulnerability, anger and depression, physical ailments and learning problems along with difficult interpersonal relations, all these symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder can be brought on by a hate crime. Fear, defined by the Enacted Encyclopedia in 2008 as an emotion caused by the threat of some form of harm, sometimes manifested in bravado or symptoms of anxiety and prompting a decision to fight the threat or escape from it, is repeatedly suggested as the primary emotion which, following the experience of hate crime, alters the victim's choices in life. Beyond emotional and psychological aspects, fear also leads to physiological effects. Momentary physiological change or distortion such as accelerated or retarded pulse rate and heart action, body temperature changes or changes in activities of certain glands, accompanies all emotional reactions. With the emotional degree of the reaction rising, the resemblance between the various kinds of reaction increases as well. Thus, extreme anger, fear or resentment have more in common than the same reactions in less exaggerated phases. Fear may also result in a violent physical manifestation such as the shaking of the limbs or a momentary loss of voice. It may also result in an attempt to disguise itself by means of an assumed coolness or even audacity. In addition, extreme stress by definition shakes one's equilibrium, alters relationships and breaks a sense of security. Further, the damaging psycho-emotional effects on victims may include but are not limited to a sense of anger. It is one of the common responses to being the victim of a hate crime. It arises from a deep sense of personal hurt and betrayal. Victims experience feelings of powerlessness, isolation, sadness and suspicion. Persistent fear as a response to victimization. Victims fear from their own safety and for their family's safety. Fear can take on paranoid qualities and drastically disrupt the lives of some victims. One of the most common reactions is a sense of injustice and a corresponding loss of faith in law enforcement and the entire criminal justice system. In addition, most victims report changes in their lifestyle such as and where they walk, how they answer the phone, reaction to strangers, suspicion of co-workers and other such changes. It is said that the motivation of the hate crime offender violates the equality principle, striking at the core of the victim's self. A study by Igansky in 2002 quotes hate crime victim as, "It scars the victim far more deeply. You are beaten or hurt because of who you are. It is a direct and deliberate and focused crime, and it is a violation of really a person's essence, a person's soul, because you can't change who you are, and it's much more difficult to deal with." Because what a hate crime says to a victim of hate crime is, "You are not fit to live in this society with me. I don't believe that you have the same rights as I do. I believe that you are second to me. I am superior to you." Victims of hate crime not only have the direct experience of the crime, but often also encounter double or secondary victimization through the biasness and the blame of people and institutions they come in contact afterwards. The fear of being treated unfairly and negatively by those who are supposed to help severely affects the willingness of the victims to report and seek help for recovery. Igansky in 2008 applies the same considerations to the racially motivated incidents that Kelly in 1987 uses in the cases of sexual violence, where the relative frequency with which such acts occur and not a notion of seriousness in terms of the impact of the acts on the woman concerned is what distinguishes one form of act from another. On the indicator of the potential harm, the emotional impact of crime, notably high proportions of victims who believed that the incidents were racially motivated reported an emotional reaction. In addition, repetitive phenomena have also been widely recognized to be a forerunner of severe trauma. Prolonged or repeated trauma increases the survivor's risk for repeated harm, either self-inflicted when feeling like not wanting to live any longer, or by recurring incidents. The pathological environment of prolonged abuse provides grounds for various psychiatric symptoms in multiple domains such as somatic, cognitive, affective, behavioral and rational. The pathological environment of prolonged abuse provides grounds for various psychiatric symptoms in multiple domains such as somatic, cognitive, affective, behavioral and relational. Chronically traumatized people are found to be anxious, agitated and exhibiting chronic insomnia, startle effect and numerous other somatic symptoms. Other symptoms include tension headaches, gastrointestinal disturbance and abdominal, back or pelvic pain, etc. Added to this, the survivors also frequently complain about tremors, choking sensations or nausea. We will now conclude this episode by revising what all we have learned so far in this episode. Conclusion: hate crime is a type of biased crime committed against a specific group of people. Hate crime is a form of prejudice that is focused at a group of people based on the people's race, age, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, religion, etc., or any other specific characteristic. Hate crimes are not new in this era. Romanians used hate crimes for torturing Christians, and in Germany, Nazis used hate crime for killing Jewish people. When two groups of different belief and thinking come in contact with each other, then there are chances of development of tension or conflict, which often results in violence. Hate crime is deep, passionate and impersonal. It is based on power and prejudice, and hatred is shown towards innocence, which is a sign of frustration of the perpetrator. Lastly, there are sections present in the Indian Penal Code which prohibits hate speech. Hate laws are defined in these sections of Indian Penal Code 124A, 153A, 153B, 292, 293 and 295A. Dear students, with all these information, here we come to the end of today's lecture. Now, I am signing off. I hope you have enjoyed the contents of this lecture. I would really appreciate it if you guys try to practice what you learn after each episode. If you want more information regarding this topic, you can visit our website www.cec.nic.in. Till then, keep studying, stay connected and goodbye.